Hello, I'm Dale Adams of Planning Ahead of Time, and today I'm speaking with Hazel. Do you want to introduce yourself, Hazel?
Yeah, hi Dale, nice to see you. I'm Hazel Carter. I live in Dorridge. I'm a widow, um, an author, and public speaker.
Perfect. Now, you've got some lovely pictures behind of Alan. So, yes, your husband who had MND.
Yes,
Okay, and you were his main carer.
yes, I was. He was diagnosed in 2017 at the age of 62. Up until that point, he'd been a perfectly healthy chap, didn't smoke, didn't hardly drank, was very fit. He had a bad right arm, and within a few weeks of all the tests, we were being told he had 6 months to 2 years to live, which, as you can imagine, was desperate. And at that time, I was already caring for my mom, who'd been diagnosed with vascular dementia with Lewy bodies 3 or 4 years before that.
Okay, well, yes. So you and I have the same situation with our mums, because my mum had Lewy body dementia as well, although my mum has already died and your mum is still living with that disease. And so has been living with it now for many years then.
Yeah, I guess it's 7, 8 years now, because it's 5 years. No, it's 4.5 years since Alan died. He lived for 18 months with his motor neurone disease, but I'm still responsible for mom. She's in a care home now.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I got to the point where I was looking after mum and I was looking after Alan, and I just couldn't cope. I mean, I gave up my job so that I could look after my husband. And I literally could not cope. Mom was having lots of falls. She ended up in hospital. They wanted to um, rehabilitate her and send her home. And I knew it wouldn't work. And eventually, when she was still having falls where she was being rehabilitated, eventually it was agreed the best thing for mom was to go into a care home.
Yeah.
But my big mistake was I hadn't got anything in place for mom. I'd got nothing. I'd got no, she'd got a will going back goodness knows how long, but I got no lasting power of attorney. And by the time I got round to thinking about things like that, we'd already got the diagnosis, which meant legally she couldn't do a lasting power of attorney. So from the second she went into the care home, which at the time was a bit of a blessing because I couldn't cope,
Mm.
her care became the responsibility of the care home. It's a nursing home, not a care home. And so at the time, that was fine because I was busy looking after my husband. My husband passed away, and obviously I was in grief. There was lockdown and all that jazz. And I obviously have been visiting mom, but I don't have the direct control that I would have done and that I certainly had with Alan. I was the person who was able to say, my husband needs this, my husband needs that. What are we doing about it? Whereas now I have to go through the management of the nursing home because they take primary responsibility.
That must be really hard for you because I know with,
Yeah,
I know with my mum it was the same situation that I think my mum had obviously had dementia for a while and we just hadn't maybe realized that or noticed some of the things. I think you do find out afterwards that there were certain things that were being hidden from you really, or they were just out of sight, put it that way, not hidden intentionally, but they were out of sight. And then when they come to light, and there was an issue with bank and details being given to a scammer, that it started to really make us realize there was something actually mentally wrong with my mom, because she was
yeah,
always the intelligent one. She always controlled the money, and we were like, why have you done this? And she just didn't seem to know. And then it advanced very quickly after a back operation, which apparently is actually quite common for something sort of quite dramatic or big in their life to actually just further it or advance it. So at that point, there was lasting powers for finance, but not for health and well-being.
ah,
However, in the early stages, because mum could still answer yes or no, and she hadn't had an actual diagnosis, because it started off as being considered to be Parkinson's.
ah,
So in that state, mentally, she still had capacity. So
right,
we would go to the doctors together. We would go to hospitals, and I would always be the person that took her. And so she was able to verbalize that she wanted me to deal with it and to speak for her. So
yes,
she was able to communicate. At that time, looking back, she probably didn't have the capacity that maybe she would have needed. but once, as you say, once she's diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, it was all too late. And when it's Parkinson's, we knew people living with Parkinson's that didn't have problems, sort of, if you like, mentally in that way. So we just didn't think we needed it then. And by the time we did, it was too late. However, she had already told the doctors verbally and in meetings with hospitals, consultants, specialists, that she was happy for me to speak and discuss her care with them. Whereas you, sounds like you didn't have that at all.
I don't know. I think not, because obviously I was in the middle of the biggest crisis of my life, trying to look after my husband who was very poorly. So it all happened while Alan was ill. So at the same time, Mom was now being put into a nursing home, which I've described in my book, by the way. Because the interesting thing is the book is about Alan's life with MND, but Mom is all the way through it. So there's actually two stories in one there. Mom's journey plus Alan's journey plus my journey as the carer for both these people. So I described that those moments in time when Mom was being rehoused to a care home, and me feeling so guilty and bad that I hadn't been able to give it my utmost attention at that time, but I just couldn't. And anyway, I knew that Alan's life was going to end pretty soon, and I could focus on Mum afterwards. And that's exactly what's happened. Of course, he's passed on. He died 4.5 years ago, and ever since then, I've been able to give a lot more time to Mom. In fact, I was watching a video of her this morning. She was singing at the home's Christmas party. She still has the most amazing voice at 86. And they'd given her a microphone, and she's holding this microphone and singing Silent Night or something. I can't remember what now. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, this is my mom. She's like a superstar in her own care home. But on the other hand, there's medical things and issues that I really want to get sorted out for her. So when I go and see her later, I will be having to talk to the nurse or the manager about what's going on with this, this, and this. Whereas normally I would be right on top of that myself.
Yes.
So
yeah. But your mum's not the only one who likes a microphone, is she?
No, I've taken to liking a microphone. Since I wrote my book and published it, can I show you a picture? There you
go. Obviously, when we met back in September, I then came to watch you speak at Lighton Hospice in Solihull and bought your book, which you kindly signed for me. And then you probably can't see it on the camera, but yes, please tell us about the book and how it can help people.
Yes, so when I wrote the book, the intention was that it would help carers who were dealing with that terribly isolating time of looking after a loved one in their own home with a terminal disease. It doesn't matter what terminal disease. Alan's disease happens to be motor neurone disease. But whatever the disease, if you're a carer, it's a lonely, tough, terribly emotionally challenging time. And you're not only trying to keep yourself together, you're trying to help the person you love keep it together. And in our case, because we knew Alan didn't have very long, we also said, let's make the best of a bad job. Let's make the best of a bad situation. And we went on a trip to Vietnam. We went on trips to Wales, Scotland, and Yorkshire in the space of 18 months. And bearing in mind, he was pretty much 100% paralyzed for most of that time. And he was on a ventilator. So this is a love story, and it's an adventure story. And Mom's in here too. So what people will get from this, I think, is obviously more knowledge about motor neurone disease, but that's not the main thing. They will get strength, and they'll identify themselves in here and the challenges that they feel as a carer. I've had so many amazing bits of feedback about this. If people go on my website, which is www.lifesgoodbook.co.uk, there's a section on there where you can see comments from readers. And what people say basically is it's been inspirational, it's moving, it's thought-provoking. But the biggest thing we did right when I was looking after Alan was getting our mindset sorted out, because there was a lot of questions in the early days flooding into our minds about why did this happen? How come he got this? There aren't any cures for MND. There's no real proper drugs or anything. You just know from day one you're going to die. And in the early days, we were like a lot of people who suffer a diagnosis like this. Our heads were all over the show. But we soon worked out how to keep ourselves mentally strong. And we used lots and lots of mantras. And we organized ourselves basically in such a way that not only did Alan have a lot of lovely times, I got loads of support through his illness as well, not just from professionals, but from family and friends. And so this book will give lots and lots of tips to people, as well as hopefully some inspiration.
I often say when I talk about planning ahead of time, which is, this is going to go into the planning ahead of time group, that the time when people start to plan is normally when they get a terminal diagnosis. But when they've got that, they plan through pain. So you're planning, but you know that actually you're going to die. So a lot of the planning that we do is to do with our loved ones and making life easier for them. So my point with it is it would be better to start planning yourself when you're fit and healthy, in fact, at any point in your life, just to make sure that your loved ones get the support that they need at the end of your life, during your death, and post-death as well. I mean, my children are early 20s and they're both currently going through making wills. And when I first suggested it, the response was, but I haven't got anything to leave. And I said, well, you have. You've got vehicles, you've got pets, you've got furniture, you've still got your emotions, you've got your life to lead. I mean, they've got information in the portal that I have created, but it's actually a physical will as well. So how do you feel about that and the planning ahead of time through terminal diagnosis or when you're healthy?
Well, I've learned so many lessons from this whole process. I got it wrong with Mum. We didn't plan for it, and then it was too late, and I had no control. With Alan, he was quite a practical chap, and we thought about all these things about what about his car, which was in his name only. We got it moved across into my name. His bank accounts, I had bank accounts, he had bank accounts. We got them changed into joint name. We got our financial advisor involved and said, well, what sort of things do we need to worry about? And he said, well, really, you need to get a will and lasting powers of attorney sorted out. Here's a chap who can help. And when that chap came to help Alan, I did mine at the same time. So I've got mine. And also, I started to ask Alan, what did he want for his funeral? What did he want for his ashes? What did he want for me after he'd gone? Yeah. He said lovely things like he didn't want me to be on my own. He wanted me to find somebody new. I asked him whether or not I should stay in the house. I asked him all those questions that I probably would have asked myself after he died, but I asked him while he was alive. Yeah. And that gave me sort of guidance, if you like, as to what to do once he passed away. But I also got a funeral director involved, and we met the funeral director while Alan was still alive. The funeral director said this was a wonderful thing to be able to meet the person he was going to look after when the time came. I think all funeral directors would rather meet somebody before the time comes. So we were able to plan loads of stuff. And I have now documented what I want for my funeral. I've got a CD with the music I want. I've got a little speech that I want someone to read out on my behalf. I probably need to update it now because I did it 3 or 4 years ago and life's changed.
I think they all need annual reviews like anything else.
Exactly, yeah. It's all there in a folder marked important. And when I went into surgery, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but I think you may do, I donated a kidney to my brother last year. To save his life. And before I went into hospital, I sent photographs of the will and the lasting power of attorney to all my family members and said, this is what's in my will, and it's in a drawer in my study, marked important documents. And by the way, you'll find my funeral plans in there. They were all going, oh, we don't want to know this. They were actually terrified that something was going to happen to me and my brother. But I said, you need to know this. You need that. This is stuff that's important.
You know, what I love about the conversation that we're having and what you're now sharing is the fact that you did these very difficult conversations, and what you've just said is so crucial, because people don't want to know. And it's hard enough when you're fit and healthy to try and tell somebody, oh, you know, it's tempting fate, don't do it, we don't want to hear it. But when somebody is dying, and I know this more of sort of with a cancer diagnosis, where there's potential for people to be able to you know, go into remission or potentially be cured, that people don't want to know, because everybody's scared of dying, understandably, but people are scared of dying, and they really don't want to actually consider that for the people that they love.
Yes.
But it's not then necessarily that helpful that when they do die, the people that they love are the ones then left with potentially some guilt or feeling of did I do it right? Have I done the right thing? We've had that with my mom, and yet I know that I did everything that I would have wanted for me. So I felt, well, that would be something that she would want for her. And but you do get that, you know, the loved ones. I work as a medium, as you know, and for me, one of the questions people often want to know is, are they okay? Are they, you know, and did I get it right? Were they happy with everything? And I think it's really crucial. So it would be nice to have that, but very hard for you to go through that.
It is. I think it's also hard if you've never experienced somebody dying in your space, if you like. That's also something that I was challenged by, knowing it was going to happen. I mean, we're all going to die one day, we know that, but you're really, it's up close and personal that this person you love and have been caring for is one day going to stop living. And I found, if I may plug another book, I found the book by Dr. Catherine Maddox, amazing, and I recommend it everywhere I go. It's called With the End in Mind, and I am in touch with Dr. Maddox because I think there's something we can maybe do together. And her book has got examples. I think it's a good 20 plus examples of different people's end of life. And that sounds pretty morbid, but I read it and found it invaluable, because I had only experienced my husband. My dad, when he died, I wasn't anywhere near him. He was living 3.5 hours away. And my mum called me and told me he'd had cancer, and we knew he was going to die. She called me, and by the time I got up to see her and him, he'd already been whisked away. I never even saw him. So with Alan, I knew I was going to be there, whatever happened.
Same with me with my mom, but often death is, these days, it's not something that's close. It's not something that we're party to. It again, it's hidden, and it is very different when you see it. It doesn't matter what you've read, as I had, and information. It's very different when you see it, but then there's also something quite beautiful about it in a different way, to actually be there for somebody who, she brought me into this world, and I was there as she went out. So it's
perfect. Well, I would have moved heaven and earth to have got to Alan the day I knew he was going to die, if I'd have known. But as it happens, I didn't know what day he was going to die. And the day he did die, I was only with him for an hour. I'd only just got to him. And within an hour, he passed. And it was peaceful, and it was quiet, and it was calm. And I was able to lie with him on his hospice bed and hold him and tell him what I felt and thought of him. And because I'd read that the hearing is one of the last things to go. So I kept talking to him, and the room went very quiet because he'd been on a breathing machine. There'd been all these machines around him, and the room went really quiet and peaceful. And I remember kissing his forehead, his cheeks, his lips, and he went very white because obviously the blood had drained from his body, but he was at peace from this dreadful disease. And I was now released from the burden of being his carer. I wasn't relieved about him passing away. I was just released from the burdens. And I was amazingly calm, actually, Dale. I was quite surprised how calm I was, because I dreaded this day. I'd assumed I was going to be like some crazy animal. The minute he died, I thought I was going to be screaming and thrashing about, but I wasn't. I was amazingly calm. And it was, as you say, it was a beautiful moment and a privilege to be there at the time when somebody is exiting this world to wherever they've gone.
And as you say, with my mum, we're over time, but I could talk to you all day long. But with my mum, as you say, the hearing is the last to go. I've always believed in that it's about 20 minutes. So I'd actually said to other people, everybody leave the room. I'd like that time just to be with her and make sure then that it was calm for her passing. And as you say, it is a very serene moment, and I don't think you can be fully prepared for it. But when somebody dies in that natural way, it is actually a blessing to be there, and it does allow you, as you say, just to be saying things and that you need to say and want to say, and certainly in those final moments, to then have it that afterwards, that now it's everything you wanted to say was said. And that, to me, is really the importance of life, is if you need to say it to people, just make sure you do, because none of us exactly know.
No.
In those circumstances, we were given a little bit of time, but you don't know. But with regards to your book, then, obviously, if you could just give us the name of the website again.
Okay. Yes, it's www.lifesgoodbook.co.uk. And that's the only place people can get it, because 100% of everything people pay is going to Motor Neurone Disease Association, Marie Curie Hospice, and the Myton Hospices in Warwickshire.
Yes, so your aim is to sell 1,500 books.
Yep, 500 have already gone, so there's only 1,000 left. And it looks like this. It's 350 pages long, and there's a lovely picture of Alan now on the back. And when they're gone, they're gone. There won't be any more printed. But I might do an audio version or a Kindle version or something in the future.
And that's to raise £20,000, which is all going to charity. You're not taking any of that money. It's all for charity.
Yeah.
And it's been lovely to speak with you, but also, just before we finish, is that you also do speak about Alan and what you've gone through. And again, can people contact you on that website if they want to consider booking you to do a presentation? Yes,
there is a contact the author on lifesgoodbook.co.uk, or they can just write to me. I do have an email address specifically for talks, which is hazel@lifesgoodbook.co.uk. They can write to me there. If there's groups anywhere, anything from 10 people upwards, doesn't matter how big the group is, I'm very comfortable doing public speaking. As you said earlier, I like the microphone.
Well, I've been and heard you speak, and it was extremely interesting, and I definitely would recommend it if somebody is looking for someone to speak on terminal diagnosis, hospices, end of life, then perfect. And I've already got your book. So it's been really lovely to speak with you again, and I will no doubt speak with you again soon. But thank you for your time, Hazel.
No, thank you. Bless you for everything you're doing, and lots of love to everybody out there.
Thank you.